Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Silver Tears Tarot and welcome to today's reading. So, this is going to be, as promised yesterday, a little bit of a third party focus reading. And the focus is really to help us understand what is acting upon them that is causing changes for you. So, that's really where we're ultimately wanting to go. And so that's what we'll do today. It's going to be a general reading for this collective. Won't resonate with everyone. And as I often say, it shouldn't resonate with everyone. But if it resonates with you, go ahead and check out some of the other videos because they are all very much connected. So they could be helpful for you. I think we will go ahead and start with this deck today, and we're going to look at the energy that's flowing between the two of you, but heavier on your person because we're looking to understand really what's going on with them, just what's happening in their situation right now, what's happening in their world. They're sitting on top of a decision. This is someone who's been having a lot of shifting, having a lot of not sure what to do, and they're being placed into, they almost feel like there's that that openness and that one in a million kind of feeling is making them feel almost like things are better than they are. And yet there's that strong sense of not having made a decision or needing to make a decision that we also see in there. Then with the Three of Spirals here in the reverse, this is a feeling of not having done something. So there's this underlying sense of anxiety, something that not necessarily that they've forgotten to do, but something that they have somehow neglected to do, and they were hoping it wouldn't matter, but they're pretty sure it's gonna matter. It's that sort of energy. So it's a anxiety, something hanging over them. But there's also a little bit of a dreamlike quality to it, and that comes in with that Ten of Mirrors a little bit there as well. Ten of Mirrors is part of what's giving it that feeling of dreaminess in general and wanting to almost make it feel like it's too good to be true, or just it's a refreshing sort of energy, but it's not one that they feel that they can trust. I'm trying, I hope I'm getting that across. I think that's probably the best I've done so far in being able to describe it. It's a refreshing energy, but they don't feel like they can trust it. There is something that they know that they're being held in place. Interesting. So they know they're being held in place to understand something, but they haven't made the connection, whatever it is. So they know they need to learn it, know they need to do it, but it's like a muscle they don't know how to flex. With the Seven of Swords in the reverse, though, they do assume that they will accomplish it by the time they need to accomplish it. So there's this feeling of like time not being, it may be a factor, but they don't feel like it's something that's going to create a problem for them. However, they're not necessarily noticing things are going in their direction. So with the Three of Pentacles, this is things falling apart at work, things falling apart maybe at home. Could be literally, but I think it's more figuratively. I think it's more a matter of when it rains, it pours. Things kind of not necessarily going the way that they want them to. We see that Two of Scrolls energy again, Two of Swords. It's air energy, and it's energy of a decision, energy of a crossroads, and they definitely are trying to figure out how best to handle this crossroads sort of energy that they find themselves in. There's a lot of this or that, either or, not a lot of both. So sometimes when they look at options, they go, oh, I wonder if I can do both of these things at the same time. A lot of indication here that there is not the option to do that. We do have the Knight of Pentacles, though, so they are doing something that they have already set into motion. And I feel like with this Three of Spirals, they don't give themselves proper credit for having set this into motion. So they've already got something kind of moving forward that, like it or not, they're going to do it. But it's also got the air of like the lessons that they're learning with you ever since they met you and had that soul recognition. You know, that's something that was going to happen. That was something that was bound to happen. It's that sort of, it's definitely coming, but not necessarily the speed of it being super clear. They are in a place right now where they're trying to understand why it is that they're doing what they're doing, but they're lacking something that is very important information, and they are disinclined to get close enough to see it. It's like getting closer to an edge to be able to see over it, but feeling like it might not be a very stable edge and it might crumble and you fall off of there. So you're unable to ultimately see what it is. But they are asking the question. They are wondering, what is it that I got to figure out here that's going to be able to help me kind of move in the direction that I need to move. And for them, I think really that feels like, how do I make this feeling of discomfort go away? There is significant change that feels like it's coming their direction that they will not be able to come. Oh, whoops, I just dropped it. They will not be able to stop this from happening. This is something that is happening from outside themselves. So it isn't something that they're bringing on themselves either. It's just a change that is occurring. This is, if it's a big work change, it could potentially, and I'm totally just making this up. I am just making this up. This is not necessarily what's happening, but this is like being laid off because they're not going to have as many people in the business anymore. Not because of anything that you did. It's that kind of change where it may constitute an enormous change in their lifestyle, but it doesn't, and it's not necessarily something that goes to a bad place. It could go to a very much more positive place ultimately, but it's a big change at the time that it happens. And the thing is, they have some idea of what it is that they want, and they've started to make some movements in that direction. I feel like they're going to figure this out. They're going to figure out the fact that some of this prerequisite work they've already kind of put in, and that it's like it's gonna come back to them. I don't know why it feels like it's gonna come back to them, what work they've done, but it feels like it happens in this time of uncertainty, in this time of change. And this is a really interesting time because their soul is a little bit open right now, and they're prepared for things to be a little bit larger than maybe what they would have expected in the past. There's a willingness to open themselves up a little bit wider right now. It's just part of what's in their energy. So now let's take a look at what's happening, because we saw that there's a potential for them to kind of reach out and almost come in like too fast and hard. It's a very it's very sudden sort of energy. Knight of Spirals does absolutely nothing to slow that down. Okay, so the Knight of Spirals that's just kind of the energy of the way everything is happening with them right now. It feels like all the doors are being slammed. A lot of movement that is not necessarily slamming and keeping them out, but just that sort of loud, fast, sudden kind of energy. And we have a Knight of Mirrors here. That's a lot of not knowing how to interpret it. So it's seeing it and saying, I know I'm taking this more personally, or I don't know how to take this. Because your person may not be taking it personally. That may not be their modus operandi. They may be somebody who says, you know what? I know I'm missing something, but I don't exactly know what that something could be. And it's, again, that feeling of having, where we've got that, the Hanged Man in the reverse, because it's an edge they can't see over because it is potentially too dangerous of an edge. So they've got the Star. Until they are able to make a movement forward or make a decision with regard to a situation they are in, they're kind of a little bit stuck in their development. So we see the energy of crossroads and decisions in front of them. It definitely extends to this situation. They have some things that they've already set in motion, but those are not necessarily moving quickly. They have the energy of someone who can execute on something very quickly, but it is not so simple. And again, there are things that they feel like they need to understand, but not being able to move forward with this and find resolution is holding them up in other areas of their life. And that's what that El-Pi card is, or the Star. That's the equivalent of the Star in this deck. Okay, so we have an Eight of Pentacles here in the reverse, talking about how we talked about seeing the edges of the healing, and I talk about it often, and this is really a lot about seeing the edges of that healing, because with the Eight of Pentacles, this is a strong awareness, but not necessarily a strong mastery of the emotions. There's a strong awareness in there. Five of Pentacles. Now, in order to, when you see how far you've come and how far you have to go, one of the cool things about it is you still get to see how far you've come. So this is realizing the changes that have happened, realizing that something doesn't bother them anymore in this third party situation. So something that would have bothered them in the past no longer does, but they kind of have to unpack that, work through it, figure out once again what their options are. So whereas they've got this crossroads sort of energy over here, I had talked about here's the energy of having multiple options that could potentially be pursued at the same time. So they have some things that are feeling murky to them right now. They don't know what they're able to accomplish and what they're not. They are very much someone who habitually tends toward the comfortable. Like they want to move toward things that are not scary to them, that feel familiar, familiar ground, good balance. This is an honorable mention, but that good balance is part of it. With the Four of Wands, it's about stability and it's about looking just put me in happily ever after, and I don't want to have to think too much, you know. And so that was kind of that's the kind of thinking that got them into the place that they are right now. They would like to be able to surrender themselves to that again. And you may see some instances of them doing that because otherwise they stand to potentially create political hardship for themselves. And this is political or social hardship. It feels like it could be either one. It's that sort of the way that other people perceive you hardship. So it's political or it's social, but it is something that they are unwilling to create that concern for themselves right now. So it's easier for them to just not think about it or to not worry about it, not threaten the stability. They've got a strong sense of not wanting to threaten stability, and that is something that is very much at odds with this tendency to almost lash out. That's that loose cannon energy that we've been seeing. Now, your person really wants to be in this happily ever after sort of situation, but they don't feel happy in their situation. So that's the problem that kind of keeps coming up for them. They haven't figured out how to address. Now we've got the Eight of Cups here. Eight of Cups talking about kind of the presentation of that quest. And I feel like it's relevant to this Tower card here. Maybe we look a little bit into this Tower and what it is for them when we get into the extended, because this feels important. It feels like that's a change that we know it's something that they can't really control, but I think we also see it as something that kind of puts them into a new way of having to think about things, a new way of living. Now, the downside is that they see some things that they're not happy with within themselves. They're able to identify places where maybe they're feeling a little bit obsessive. We've seen that energy of secret obsession with them in the past. We saw that generating a lot of pressure for them, a lot of guilt, a lot of not being sure what to do moving forward. This is that guilt kind of coming to a head. So whereas they just want to live in that happily ever after energy and they don't want to have to think about this, despite their ability to kind of do that, despite even though there are things happening outside that are forcing them to turn around and look again, you know, there's so much pressure bringing them out of this that I don't know that they're going to be able to ignore it, because they are trying to retract. We saw that in yesterday's reading. Here we are. Yeah, they're trying to retract and cut themselves off, but they're having a really tough time doing that because the emotion is bubbling up whether they like it or not. And it is not necessarily pleasant emotion. It kind of takes their legs out from under them. So this is a very difficult time for them because some of these truths that we've been seeing come up in these readings are going to become very real for them. We have the Three of Swords, which is a sadness. It's a sadness that has been pervasive in trying to capture them, almost to bring them into a place of depression. But what it's really supposed to be is to allow them to let go of something. In this month of April, we have that energy of letting go, but this is a monumental thing to let go of. They are not feeling strong enough to do that. There's a great deal of fear that kind of governs their inability to let go. The first step of that would be to let this change happen. But I feel like this Tower is going to put them into a position. The Tower is something they can't control. The Death energy, where they won't allow some change to occur, is something they have a little bit more control of. And we see them in a lot of cases looking to exert that control where possible. Definitely saw it coming out in yesterday's reading, if I recall, right off the bat with that Emperor, I think, coming out in the reverse there. So we've got the Ace of Cups, which is, okay, so I often talk about there is this feeling of emotion. There's this feeling of love that comes up, and that they are having a very hard time really like getting rid of. They don't know how to manage it. They don't know how to get rid of it. They don't quite know what to do with it. It is an uncomfortable thing to them that they would just as soon kind of push down and not have to deal with. So this is, if you've got somebody who's kind of an avoidant attacher, this is definitely going to trigger that avoidant type of attachment in them, even though there's not anybody on the other side creating this. This is just kind of a tendency, that love that's boiling up, or that emotion that's boiling up in them because it's not being given an opportunity to come out. It doesn't just go away. So the fact that they want to ignore things does not simply cause it to just go away. And that's the name of the game there. Probably the name of the reading. Ignoring it does not necessarily make it go away. And that's what they're trying to do with this third party. They're trying to ignore the emotions that have come up in them. So we're going to take a look at this tower when we get into the extended, and just kind of see, what kind of change it is that seems like it's coming your direction. Before we do, let's get into the portion of the reading that is really about you. Yeah, your focus. All right, so you've got some places where you've been shown the extent of your healing. You've been shown some places where you might be a little bit resistant. And what are we going to do about that? It's a matter of figuring out how you want to address it, how you want to think about it. You have a Knight of Stones, slow, steady movement in a positive direction. Start writing some things down if you don't already. This is that, go into your journal and make sure that you're writing things down that you'll be able to read back to yourself later, and maybe even then go in and read some of the things that you had written in the past. You have an opportunity to bring some things together for yourself internally that require you to go in, understand some truths, and then sort of allow yourself to be okay with them, even though not necessarily that they're just so bad, but they are not necessarily something that you would have anticipated, or things that you think are the way that they would be. It's opening your mind, taking advantage of the fact that you've got this open-minded energy around you in the month of April. And also realizing your person is struggling with something very much right now within themselves. So their behaviors with you might be a little bit slower, and might seem to be pulling back or retracting a little bit. Their energy is not necessarily retracting back from you, which may make it feel confusing. You're moving into a place of greater balance, but it could be a little bit confusing because it feels like it happens in fits and starts. So it's like you're moving quickly, then slowly, then quickly, then slowly, and that can constantly be throwing you off balance. It's a matter of, I think, just kind of, you need to roll with it. These things are going to put you in a better place. But everything here, this Two of Stones, this Justice, everything says you've got this, and you're going to be moving into that better place of balance. Okay, so then here with the Queen of Swords, there is something that you're going to have to remove. So maybe you've been working too hard and you need to find some way to work a few fewer hours, or maybe you've been doing too many things and you need to take one or two things off your plate or delegate them to someone else. There's change happening within your household, and you need to be able to accommodate that in order to maintain some level of happiness. It could be, hey, you're hitting a different stage of life, and what you used to do in a previous stage of life or a previous stage of your life is not what's appropriate going forward. Now, maybe you don't want to hit the gym 5 days a week. Maybe it's 3 now, or there's something that's happened where you're changing your diet. It's things that could be fairly innocuous looking or sounding, like changing your diet, but things that really change your life significantly. You may just need to be open to cutting some things out or removing some extraneous parts. There's very much a sense of getting rid of something that feels like it's just a habit at this point, but you don't really necessarily need it. You are going into a place of healing. Sometimes that's not going to feel fair. It's not going to feel comfortable. It's going to feel, I would think, fairly uncomfortable. It's going to be something where you're constantly realizing the reason that you're uncomfortable is an acceptable one, though. So I feel like your perspective is a healthy one. You have the Chariot card here in the reverse, suggesting that you may be disinclined to move forward with something. It doesn't feel as like severe as this Death card in the reverse, where your person is just flatly refusing to, they're just say it isn't so, but it's like you have judgment, you have your own better judgment that you're kind of going against, and maybe just sort of missing an opportunity because it'll come back, and it will. But there is something where you could choose to have good timing on something and it will all be much more enjoyable to you. Honestly, the shifts that you want to make here are nuances. They're going to be the difference between good and better in a lot of cases. You do have memories from the past that I feel like are going to be coming up for you. Memories from the past, you want to honor those, give yourself a little bit of time to think about them, to think about the emotions that they bring up, but I think they're also going to shore you up somewhat. So one of the things that we've seen in the recent readings here is this sense of, yesterday, remember we saw in the U section, there were all these pentacles in the reverse. I think we had a king and a queen and a page and a knight all in the reverse. And it was kind of like perception. It was self-perception not allowing you to move forward. This is saying this energy can be allowed to kind of fill you up. Sit in that meditation, do your writing, allow this to fill you up, and it's going to solve some of those issues that maybe that we saw potentially cropping up in yesterday's reading. So even if you haven't experienced them yet, this is going to be the answer. So we're going to go ahead and go into the extended, and we're going to look a little bit more into this tower, because remember, there were a lot of things that were kind of happening with your person that we had taken some extra time to look at. We saw a triggered secret obsession, a lot of pressure that they seemed to be experiencing. They were very triggered. They were experiencing a lot of need for secrecy. It was clear that a lot of this was even something that was hidden from them. And they had an obsession they were hiding, in some cases, hiding from themselves. But here we can see that it's more than just hiding it from themselves. It's a matter of just kind of refusing to handle it a certain way and feeling shame around it. There's a sense of that shame around it. They just, they have a hard time, they have a hard time with this, but it wasn't, we got into the hard edge a little bit, just making sure that it wasn't dangerous. Didn't feel like it was dangerous, but it did feel like it was super duper intense. And that's kind of what we've been watching, and just pairing it with that energy of April, so it feels like they come in almost with like this energy of a drunk text, but it goes better than expected. But what you learn from it, again, isn't necessarily what it was there to tell you initially. You wouldn't have guessed that that was what you were going to learn from it. So there's a lot that they're going through. Like I said, well, I kind of digressed there a little bit and got into some of the other things that I'm still feeling are working on this energy, but we're going to look into them because they've got this, again, this high pressure sort of situation that comes in where they are refusing some change, but they're also going to be experiencing some change. So we're going to look in to see what, again, that means and how it affects you. This is them, when we were looking at what's the dynamic with this third party energy, whether it's a job, a marriage, a person in their family that they're afraid to lose that sense of stability with. They're having a hard time maintaining themselves and kind of just saying, you know what, let me just try to forget about this. Let me just go back to the way it was. Let me just, and in a lot of cases, that is something that was super clear earlier on. They were not going to be able to do that. So they are doing it again because they're trying to be in denial, because it would be so much more comfortable to just go back to not caring anymore or not minding anymore in some way. So that's kind of the fight that we see them fighting here, and those new truths that have come to them that aren't necessarily new, but have been, the light has been shined on them and they cannot ignore. That's the sort of place that they wake up into every day and say, oh gosh, these realities are still here. What am I going to do about it? And there's a lot of fear around that, and a lot of not quite being able to see what that next step should look like. So let's, when we get in there, look to see what this tower is all about, the nature of the changes that are happening for them, and maybe a little bit of what you could be doing. So on your side, it looks like you're going through kind of your own area of focus over here. But if anything wants to pop out about what you can be doing to make this better or what you can expect as far as the type of communication from them, we'll look into that as well. So I'm going to go ahead and go into that extended. The link is going to be down there in the description. I look forward to seeing you in that extended, or if not, then I'll see you again in tomorrow's reading.